In the previous video, we learned how to box multiple operators together so that they can be located inside a single Maya node. So for example, if I go and select these three operators on top of my hair, I can right click and box them into a single Groom node. However, this Groom node right now is sort of a black box because I cannot really adjust any of its parameters or modify its behavior. It will update the hair as I change the input hair, but it will do so with the same parameters that were defined when we boxed those operators together. Ornatrix allows exposing the parameters of the operators inside of this Groom node into the user interface in a very flexible and powerful way. If you go to the attribute editor after selecting this boxed Groom node, you will see that there is an edit parameters script button. If I click this button, it will open up a text editor. For you, this may be Notepad, but I have Notepad++ installed, so this is what opens up. And inside of it, we will get a Python script containing a parameters array. And inside of this parameters array, we have a bunch of different lines, each containing a single parameter or a parameter grouped. All of these parameters are currently commented out, and they are here mostly for reference purposes. They are generated automatically from the nodes located inside of the boxed operators. So if I want to expose one or more of these parameters, I need to add them to this parameters array. So I can, for example, go and select this width value parameter and uncomment it. Then I save this file, so I press Ctrl S to save it. And when I go back to Maya, I can press this update button here, and after I do that, we see that the Groom parameters dropdown now has a single value parameter. It is set to 1 and we can change its value. So for example, if I set this to 2, we are now controlling the width of the hairs as predicted because this is the parameter that we exposed. Let's look a little bit closer at some of these lines inside this file. If you take a look, each line has a certain structure. It is a structure containing 3 or more values, and the very first value is the name of the parameter as it's going to appear inside this user interface. So let me change this value here, for example, to width value. Again, I'm going to save the script, press update, and just like this, you can see this parameter name has been changed. The second part of this structure is a string containing the type of the parameter that we're currently specifying. Some of these parameters are float, which means they are scalar floating point value. Some of these parameters can be an integer or boolean, or they can be a string and a number of other types. However, some of them say group. So basically this means that once you define this parameter here, which says strand group, everything below this group until the next group is going to be grouped together using the drop downs in Maya. So in case of width, I'm going to uncomment this width group value, and I'm going to uncomment the randomize, and then I'm going to save the script again and update it inside Maya. And you see that we get this width group, and inside of this we have the width value. If I put more lines here, for example, if I take this line, copy and paste it here, and call this parameter randomize, because it's still located under this group, we did not define the next group yet. If I save and update, you can see that it appears under the width dropdown. So then the very next value after the type of the parameter is a function parameter that Ornatrix will use to set the values inside the operators. In Python, we have something called lambda, which allows us to define a function inline directly inside of our structure definition here. I can also define a function and reference it here, but this way using a lambda just makes the code shorter and more readable because we can see right away what the value will do. So this lambda accepts 2 parameters. First one is the graph manager. I denote it using the variable name gm, and the second is value, and the value is denoted as v. The next thing after this colon here is what happens when the parameter is modified. So in our case, we're telling the graph manager to set the value of the node called changeWidth1, which is one of the operators that are boxed inside of this Groom node. We're telling it to change the parameter called width.value to the value v. And the value v is the value that you pass from the user interface inside this parameter. So here you can do many things. For example, you can change it to the value of v times 2. And if I update this, now we get twice the thickness that we would normally get. You can do many other things inside here. For example, you can change value of multiple parameters, or you can even do things like turning certain operators on and off just using these parameters. But we will go over this in a more detailed tutorial in the future. At this point in the preset script, our parameter definition ends. However, we can also provide two more values after this. And these values define the minimum and maximum values for this parameter, which will be displayed inside the user interface. So if I want to take my width and I want to say this width should only be between values of 0 and 10, I can specify extra two values, 0 and 10, save this, update my script, and you can see that inside the user interface we now have a slider which allows us to drag this value between 0 and 10. Once you save this script, you no longer have to keep this file, which is a temporary file. The script is actually stored inside of your Groom node, and it will be stored together with your scene and reloaded after the scene is reloaded. We will learn in the future how this Groom parameter script are especially useful for things like graphed grooms and presets. But for now, I think we covered enough in this introductory tutorial. Thank you.